Hello, and welcome to what I'm going to start calling Simply Mayhem. Uh, this is something I mentioned in the update video. I kind of want to have, an alternate day to just do whatever. One of the things I want to do is kind of talk about maybe my personal experiences and relay stuff that I've been through or how I've dealt with things, and perhaps that can help others. So, today we're going to talk about depression. I'm sure a lot of you know what depression is, and I'm sure a lot of people have experienced it. But I feel this is something that is often downplayed. A lot of people don't understand what level of depression they're experiencing. They don't, or even in my case, I couldn't see it, and it led me down a poor choice of paths. It can get you involved with, the wrong people who can take advantage of that. It makes you weak to many things. It can, make you subservient to addictions. It can lead to really horrible things. A good friend of mine had someone who took their own life, and this was something they've been fighting with depression for quite some time. And a particular action of a loved one triggered them to do that. And it's not something that people shouldn't be afraid to talk about it, and you should never be afraid to get help for it. So what I want to do here is, I am not a psychologist by any means, so don't think that. I want to talk about what I've done, what I've seen, what I've experienced, and hopefully, you can take that as lessons, maybe experiment with some of that yourself and see what you could do in order to, take advantage of my mistakes, as it were, or successes in some cases. This kind of was spurned a conversation that I had with Louie, and it made me think, like, hey, there's a lot of stuff that I have experienced, and what's the harm in sharing that? Sure, I have to kind of bear myself to y'all, but at the same point, if one person can gather something from it that's going to help them not be in the same situation I was, then I'm all for that. So I'm not going to rehash a lot of my history. For those of you that already know it, you know where some of that's been. I'll talk about how depression took its form in me. You've got, basically, I was living a normal life. So one thing I've used as a basis is the stages of kind of how depression sets in, and I wrote them down here. Stage one being tension, and that's kind of, that can be a lot of times something that comes about like at work. You just feel like you're not good enough, or you're not going to be able to achieve enough, or something along those lines, but it kind of starts triggering, triggering you to feel bad. Stress is the next level, where you're like really worried about things, whatever those may be, but you're truly worried about it, and they start consuming your time. Then the third stage is when it's actually impacting your psychological behaviors and your actual active behaviors. Perhaps you start losing interest in things you enjoy. You stop going out, stop wanting to be around other people. And the last stage, of course, is complete physical and emotional exhaustion. Now, this is really the dangerous state, where it's gone beyond impacting, I don't want to go out today, guys, I'll just stay home. But rather, you don't want to get up in the morning. You have a hard time motivating yourself to do anything whatsoever. And that leads down a very dangerous road. So, there was a point in my life where I had, there were a lot of other factors at that point, but I experienced a tragedy which kind of triggered me to go from a state of where I've always had some level of depression, right? Where I could feel, I feel like lonely or feel inadequate for something, but that trigger caused me to go full on like, why? Why do I bother doing things? And at that point, it had all consumed me to the point literally I would get up each day and think, who cares? I was going through life as an automaton, just doing things. And that led to one of the very, very famous lines from that show. Because really, at that point in my life, I didn't care if I lived or died because there was, to me, I didn't see anything. I didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't see a way out. I was doing purely reacting on, living on instinct and trying to find whatever could get me that juice for that single day without being able to think in the future because there was no future. And of course, in that scenario, that can lead to a lot of self-destructive behavior. I can't say thankfully, but at that time, after a few years, I lost my brother. And whatever that did, that kind of was like a weird slap in the face that kind of made me think about some things. And realize I needed to take some control over my life. Now, here's the problem I had in that instance. I was doing the change. I was changing my life because I wanted to do something for someone else. And this is where I think it's critical to understand the difference between doing something for yourself and doing something for someone else. And I believe the root of depression is not believing in yourself, not knowing that inside you really are a good person, you're successful, you're attractive, you're funny, whatever that is, but not truly believing that, but rather trying to be a mold of someone else. And at that time in my life, I was changing my life for someone else. So that still kept me in I altered my own destructive behavior, but at the same point, I became a target for, the type of people that can feed on that. And if you ever been seriously depressed, or if you've ever been an addict, you'll notice there's a lot of people who they sense that weakness in you and know how to feed off of it. And this led me into some poor relationship choices where, effectively, I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe I was good enough, or rather a good person, or, why would anyone love me? And if you have someone around you who enables that type of thought process, it's a very dark hole that you're only going to dig deeper and deeper in. And I was in that hole to the point where it didn't matter what they said, I believed them. They could have said I was a mushroom, and I would have gone and sat in the basement without light, waiting to grow. And that is something, it's horrible. It's an absolutely horrible feeling when you don't feel like you can do anything. You're powerless to help this. Stop what you're feeling, but you don't realize it. I didn't realize that I was depressed. I thought, oh, this is my life. Oh, yeah, it's true. And it took me a very long time to understand what had happened in that. After that, it went more downhill. That ended, but by that point, I had been so broken down mentally to where I couldn't understand what laid ahead for me. Again, I was back in that thing. It wasn't that at that point, obviously, yes, there were multiple times I wanted to end my own life. One night in particular, I remember that it was one of those moments that I can look back on and know, had someone, a particular friend of mine, called me at that time and just wanted to meet with me out of the blue. And that was what kind of prevented that. Instead of wallowing in my own misery, I was around somebody else. And that's something I highly recommend. If you get in a situation where you feel like that, pick up the phone. Use any kind of video chat you have, audio chat, I don't care. Call someone, talk to someone. Don't wallow by yourself. There's always a friend out there that cares about you, a loved one that cares about you. No matter how much you think no one does, it's not true. Never believe that. There's always someone out there. And you may find friends in the most bizarre places you'll ever meet. And what that can do for you, it may take a while to understand it, but it can really change your life. So never be afraid of that and never think you're alone, because you aren't. I mean, at worst, shoot, ask me. I respond to messages on here. So, no one's ever going to be alone, and no one ever should have to feel that way. So the problem was, at that point, I had been so destroyed that literally the only types of people I could attract into relationships were the people that would feed on that and encourage that and keep me further beat down to where I didn't feel like I could escape, but rather I'd become, Stockholm syndrome. I was used to that type of mental abuse and torment, to where I accepted it and would just not understand what it was. Now, I had a couple good friends that always supported me. But again, not everybody's going to know how to deal with that. And I internalize, right? I don't really talk about it. I don't really let that thing out. So they don't even know. And that's another thing I'm going to recommend. Tell your good friends when you're feeling that. Talk to them about it. Don't hide it. People are your friends, your family. They care, someone cares about you. Tell them what you're feeling and get that out there. Don't hide it. Don't bottle it in. It doesn't help. I can assure you it doesn't help. I had this is something that I managed to really keep inside for nearly 2 decades. And it did a lot of damage to me over that amount of time. So at this point, there was I just didn't seem to care what I was doing with my life. Those of you, if you've listen to the EP that I put out with the lyrics, if you can translate what some of that's about, you might understand it. And in regards to that, I'm going to do the full album eventually here, maybe in the next year or two. And you'll get the whole story, because it hasn't been lost, and it'll be a little bit more schnazzed up. But that was something very much trying to deal with the internal pain that I was feeling at the time, as well as, lingering guilt, almost guilt over being alive, right? It was slightly survivor's guilt, but more combined with the feeling of being worthless and not worth more. This was an interesting time in my life. I met someone who's become, my absolute best friends. And that was truly a defining moment in my life. I don't know how to, it's difficult to explain, because this is just a friendship, right? But for some reason, knowing that, this person likes me for who I am, something about that set a spark in me. It took a few years to ferment and become something more, but something at that moment, and I remember it very clearly when I first met this person and we started talking, and it laid something in me that helped me connect dots over the years back to my older friends, some other meetings I've had with people, and really made me realize, wait a second. Wait, if all these people like me and these people respect me for me, well, then maybe this person telling me or this person giving the energy that I'm not worth something or not a good person. Maybe they're wrong. So, forward a little bit. I was in a very, very dark relationship. Put it that way. Very, very negative, very much every second beat down. This is something I will tell you all. If you've ever been in a relationship like that, get out. If someone you're supposed to be even friends with, if they're telling you that you're not good enough for something, if they're telling you that you're worthless, you're stupid, you're weak, you're ugly, leave immediately. That is not someone you need in your life. You're not. Because you're not. Everybody has their own intrinsic value, and you need to embrace that, because you need to understand that you really are a special person. And everybody is special, and not in a generic way. I don't mean like that. Every person that I've ever met in my life is unique in their own way, and they have something to offer. But you need to recognize the negative people and just not involve them in your life. Maybe that is what they have to offer, but they're not for you. And recognize it quickly. Listen to your friends. Maybe bounce that idea off your friends, or professional help if you need it. Right? There's nothing against professional help. But a lot of people aren't comfortable with that, or it may be a financial concern. Your friends are great people to talk to. So, at this point, I'd started, a few years have gone forward, and I've started to understand, wow, when I'm around my friends and these people, I feel like I'm a good person. And when I'm around this person, I feel horrible. Now, the problem was, of course, at this time I was living with this person, and it became my life, right? So I didn't understand that. Long since points, I stopped doing hobbies I enjoy, stopped doing pretty much everything I enjoy. And you'll forget that if it happens subtly, and you don't realize it until one day you're like, oh my God, I don't enjoy anything. All I enjoy is the misery that is being inflicted upon me, or the misery I'm wallowing in. And so, again, the important thing I'm trying to say here is it's still, the power is within yourself, or in myself. It wasn't, that person was doing something wrong, but it's not their fault. It's my fault for tolerating it. It's my fault for not seeing it earlier. And it's my fault for not getting help earlier. In this instance, I had a situation where I wasn't around that person for longer periods of time. And I was doing things that I always enjoyed to do, but hadn't done. And all of a sudden, it dawned on me. I remember waking up at my friend's house, and kid woke me up, and I remember waking up feeling so happy. And that was the first time I had woke up and felt happy in so long that I couldn't remember it. And it was almost like a surreal moment. I'm like, what's happened? And it took several years after that too to fully realize that. But that first, it's going to happen in stages. And if you feel things like that, my advice is analyze them, embrace them, understand what happened different. And don't think of it as like, I got drunk and I was happy, right? That's not a good behavior. Usually it's going to be very subtle things that, like I said, a kid waking me up. Why would that make me happy? Right? It's, you're removing these stressful elements, removing these painful elements from your life, and really look at what is changing in you. And the more I noticed that I was away from this person and doing things that maybe I enjoyed, I started really feeling happy. I would feel light, like just a million tons had been removed from me. And through that, I would, through that, I realized all of a sudden when I go back to this person, I would go from smiling and feeling like, oh man, it's a great day, look at the weather, to killed me. And it was really that drastic, to the point where I was like, the final decision that I made was really to the point where if I have to remain in this situation, I don't want to live. And of course, I made the decision to leave that, get out of that, and save myself. Now, here's where I think it made a difference. When I finally realized that, okay, I've deleted this negative energy from me. Well, now I'm alone, right? Or wrong. Well, I still have all my friends. I have my circle of friends. Enjoy myself. Do what I like doing. Be who I am. And learn to truly love who I am. And I did that. And then things changed. Really, my life changed. I met someone who, for a relationship, who is a perfect match for me, who has the same ideas, philosophies, desire to be happy and positive, exactly like me. And it was not something I looked for, not something I tried to do at all. It was completely by chance and accident that it even happened. But how did that happen? I didn't even understand at the time, and now I do. Because I'd finally learned to embrace and care about who I am. And I felt like I was a worthy person. I understood. I have this friend because they like me. Not because of something I'm doing for them. They like me. And that changes who you are. So again, I could go on forever about this, and without delving into specific scenarios, it gets a little, maybe a little vague. But the idea is, look inside yourself, understand who you are, love who you are, be that person, and find the right people who around you who will embrace who you are. Don't ever be afraid of who you are. And if you feel horrible, don't let it overwhelm you. Now, I'm not saying I don't still deal with it. I believe depression is an illness that will continue. I'll always have it. And I still struggle with it on some days. But I can say over the past couple of years, I've now developed a support infrastructure of friends and family that can help me deal with it when all of a sudden that black monster creeps up and wants to pull me down into the pit of despair. And I've learned how to know. If I feel that, stop, talk, reach out, fix it. It ain't going to go away right away. I will never promise you that, but that will help you. I mean, I hope at least. It certainly helps me. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be ashamed of it by any means. Embrace that it's there and learn how to deal with it and learn how to love yourself and fight that back because you're better than that. So again, I don't want to go on for like an hour here talking. This is kind of experimental, y'all. So let me know what you think of this type of discussion. If you have anything specific you'd like me to go into, please ask. I'll gladly do it. I'm really, really interested to see what y'all think about this. Is this type of thing helpful, beneficial to you? I have no problem sharing my mistakes and pain of the past if it's going to help one person. I really don't. I think, if I can give back something to people, that to me is totally worth it. So this has been a interesting episode of Just Mayhem. Please like, subscribe, check out Patreon, and we'll see you next time. Who knows what we're talking about?